Yesterday, I actually said that we will be learning today dot git ignore. Correct? Sometimes what happens is you do not wish to commit few files or folders. Okay, so when you are trying to debug, generally if it is a .NET application or a Java application or something, some files would be generated or folders would be created. Those files are temporary ones. These files are not actual source code. Okay, so when you compile, for example, if it is a .NET application, so you'll get something called a debug folder. Correct, right? So the debug folder and all, we are not supposed to commit it because that's not a source code, actually speaking. Okay, that see, that is the after effect of your compilation. Okay, so those kind of folders, you are not supposed to commit and push it. That can easily be generated by anyone, actually, that particular code. For example, if you are using something like node modules, I'll give you an example so that you'll understand. For example, this is the node modules folder. So if it contains, you can see there 8.48 MB. This is not actual source code. This can be generated easily. How? I'm just trying to delete this one. I deleted this. Now I'll take this path. I'll come to the command prompt. CD and that particular path. Now if I say npm install, that entire folder will be generated automatically. Okay, so I just ran one command. Now you can see that node modules, I got it back. So again, it is having 8.4 MB. So these kind of folders, you're not supposed to push to the central repository. Now, because this can be generated, right? So why that much of MB of files you should be, and this is dynamic, meaning it as of now you are actually getting few node modules like this. In future, if you are using some other version, it can be something else also, and you are not supposed to store all this in the as part of a source code. So that's the reason what we need to do is we need to ignore it. We need to ignore these folders. Okay, so how do I ignore is the question. Ignore the files or the folders. Okay, now what do I do? I'll try to create one folder. Inside that particular folder, I'll keep some files and I'll try to create one file as well, and we'll try to ignore both of them. So let us move to the folder which we were working yesterday. So this is the folder. Okay. So now what do I do? Into this particular folder, take two files. Don't get confused. You can take the files from anywhere, doesn't matter. So I just took two files. Now I'm creating one folder here. I'll simply say debug folder, and I'm moving this particular file into this debug. So now there is a folder with debug. It contains one file, and there is another file actually which is outside of that particular folder. Now what I'm trying to do, I'm actually trying to do git bash here now. If I say git bash, git status, that particular folder and file are getting displayed as untracked files. Now I don't want to display that also because I don't want to commit. Okay, so I don't want to display this as untracked file. I want these files to be ignored by the Git. Even though those files and folders exist in that particular folder, it should not be displayed as untracked and I'm not supposed to commit it. So to do that, what I can do is I can create a file called .gitignore file. .gitignore file. So by using Windows, if you wish to do it, what you can do is you need to go to Notepad. I'll show you the both ways, and you need to save it. But where do you save it? In that particular folder. So here you need to type .git ignore and you should say all files. I do not want any extension to this particular file. Remember that. There shouldn't be any .txt extension, nothing.
Sir,
Yeah, tell me.
sir, voice is breaking, sir.
Voice is breaking. One moment. I'm using proper internet only here. Is it for everyone?
No, sir, we can audible.
Yeah. So then check your internet. Okay. Because I'm using a proper broadband here, so shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, sir, I'll check from my end.
Yeah. Okay. So now where was yeah, I'm here. So I should not be having any extension to that particular file. So you mention all files and .git ignore. Now what will happen? It gets created .git ignore file. So I'm just closing this. And when I move to this one, you can see .git ignore. That symbol you should get it. And there should not be any extension to that file. If you say ls, I should not see any extension. I'm not. Okay, that's fine. So if I say git status, it will be displayed anyway. Can you see here? There is no extension to that file. Why ls is not getting displayed? Because it's a hidden file. Okay, if I say ls-a, it will be displayed anyway. So don't worry about ls-a. These are all Linux commands. Okay, fine. Now, I want, there is one more way I mentioned, correct? So what is that way? That is by using Linux, simple way. So I'm just deleting this file. I'll try to create by using Linux command. So touch is a command in Linux to create a file. Touch is a command in Linux to create a file. So I'm saying touch .git ignore. That's it. No extension to that particular file. Easy, right? So just do that. So it's created. So if you say ls-a, you can see that particular file. But when I say git status, it is like all three are displayed as untracked. But what is our intention? The debug folder and the exception master.cs should not be displayed as untracked. So what you can do is you can take these two files and open your .git ignore. .git ignore. So let me open from here. I'll say file, open folder. Okay, projects. There is. So you can see .git ignore here. Copy those two files here, the file and the folder. Okay, you can also use like wildcard extensions, something like this. Let's say I want my files which are having the extension of .log should be ignored, all the files. Then what I can say, star.log, all the files which are ending with .log. I mean, whichever the files are having .log extension will be ignored. But anyway, I don't have that kind of files now, but that is how we can do it. Okay, so now I'm just removing this anyway. I don't want that. Now, after you modify, you need to do what? Save. Remember this. You need to save it. How do you save it? Control S. Okay, so that has to be done. So now, if I say git status, I don't see that folder and file as untracked, even though that file and the folder exist in my working directory. Yes. So that's the reason we use .git ignore. Now, but this .git ignore must be committed. Why we should commit this? Even this folder and the files should be ignored for other developers also. Am I correct? It's not only to you, right? To all the developers, it should be ignored. So that's the reason you should be committing it. Definitely, when you are really working for a project, it can be any kind of project, there must be one .git ignore file. Without that, I don't see a project at all. It can be any technology, doesn't matter. Definitely, there will be a possibility. And I've given an example. If it is a .NET, definitely you should be ignoring the bin folder, debug folder, all that. If it is a Node.js, definitely Node modules. Correct, right? So like that, for each and every technology, there will be some files and folders. You should be ignoring it. You should not be committing it, whatever the working directory contains. That's the reason. Okay, fine. Now I'm not committing this one, but I practically, you are supposed to do that. Getting the point? That is about .git ignore. Okay, fine. Any questions on this? Is this clear? Okay. So now let us move to the next topic in the Git only, which is Git branching. Give me one moment. Okay. Branching. Initially, when we started the Git, I explained, I mentioned branching, I'll teach later. Okay, now it's time to learn. I mentioned the hierarchy, right? First, it would be workspace, then the project, then the repository, then branch. So directly in the repository, you will not be keeping your files. Definitely in a branch, you will have it. Now, branch is a copy. Branch is a copy. So why do you need this copy is the question. I'll give you one example. Let's say you're working for one project as a developer. As a developer, there are few commits, let's say 20 commits or 30 commits or whatever, and one sprint got over. You are working on next sprint actually. Now, in that particular sprint, you're working on one particular task. Now, your architect or tech lead has come to you, and that architect is asking you to work on some POC. POC meaning proof of concept. Proof of concept. What do you mean by proof of concept is such kind of functionality you never implemented it. We are not very much sure whether it works or not. So you, before directly implementing in the project, so you wish to verify whether it works or not. If it doesn't work, you do not wish to take that code. Okay, if it works, you may need to take that code and merge into the actual code. Sometimes, see, but it is not that you wish to work on that particular POC from the scratch. By using existing code only, you wish to work on it. On top of that, only you wish to implement it. But no, there is a problem, right? If you work on existing code and if it doesn't work, then unnecessary code you will be having it. And also, deleting becomes an issue. Like, it's not like only one or two files you will be changing it. Multiple files will be there. And one more problem here is, if you are combining the actual task work, its POC will be done like over the period. It's not like you will be working only on the POC. You'll be working on other tasks also. Like whenever you get time, you'll be working on POC. Now you can't combine actual task code and the POC code and commit it. Am I correct? Because that POC is something you may ignore later because you have not decided whether to use that code or not. It depends on the outcome, right? So you can't club both and commit it. So that's the reason you wish to have that separately. Generally, such type of scenario comes, what exactly you do? You take an entire copy of that particular folder and you work it separately. Am I correct? But you are not supposed to do that. Everything you should be doing it inside this repository only. Why? Even though it is POC, if any issue comes actually, like if that system get crashed or something, then you'll be losing it. And the second problem would be like, if that POC is working and you need that changes to be merged into the main branch, then manually you need to place the changes. If you're taking a copy of that particular folder, then you can't merge by using git commands. You have to manually open each and every file and you need to merge it. I don't want to do that. Correct, right? When you do anything manual, make mistakes. If it is one or two files, is fine. But generally, you'll be having multiple files. When you talk about a project contains so many files. Okay, so you should not be thinking like simple like this. Sometimes there can be like 1,000 files also. Are you getting my point? It's not like only few and difficult to copy. For example, if anything goes wrong, think in this way. There is I showed you the node modules folder, right? Node modules contains, this we ignored, but practically I'm saying. And even this particular folder also, it contains so many files and folders. If any one of the file, one moment, I'll just show you the node module. So this contains so many files, right? So let's say if this is a source code, you're supposed to make some changes and all. You will not be knowing like which file you really modified, right? Yes or no? That's the reason if it is part of a Git, you will get to know what are the files. If you say merge, automatically it gets merged, and if you are missing something, definitely it displays saying that these files are still not committed or something. You'll get to know. That is the reason everything you should be having as part of the Git only. Whatever you do with the source code, using all Git commands only you need to do it. You should not be taking a copy of that particular folder, keep it somewhere else. I've seen, generally I see so many people, what do? They'll keep on creating backup. Then let's say 1 week you are taking a leave. You go to vacation and come back, there will be 10 folders. Then you will be in a confusion which folder belongs to what purpose also. Are you getting the point? So that's the reason, don't take a backup folders and all. You create a branch for each and every purpose. You create a branch here only. Branch is what? It's a copy, right? Create a branch and have that branch has some meaningful name. Then you know the purpose. Yes or no? So why you are creating that? For example, I'm saying POC. What kind of POC? Name it, no? Then everything will be here only and easily you can merge it back also when it is required. That is the reason we actually create branches. Understand? So to make you understand, I've given you an example of POC. But it's not like only for POC you create branches. There are n number of scenarios. There is something called Git branching strategy. What is that? Git branching strategy. As a DevOps engineer, I'm not talking about developers. As a DevOps engineer, you are responsible to have a branching strategy for your project. Branching strategy for your project. But everyone in the team supposed to know what is the branching strategy for that particular project. And everyone must follow that strategy. Whoever is touching the code, they must follow this branching strategy, including developers. Okay, but it is the responsibility of the DevOps engineer to have a branching strategy. But when I say responsible to have a branching strategy, it's not that that decision should be taken only by you. You need to communicate with the tech lead and architect or someone, sometimes even with the client also, and have a decision. Okay, fine. So now let's talk about what do you mean by branching strategy? Is the question, right? Branching strategy explains you meaning in for your project, what are all the branches you are planning to have? Okay, so there has to be a strategy. I mean, you cannot create like by your own multiple branches, all that, right? Okay, so that's the reason. Now I'll give you few scenarios where and all for what purposes you can actually have a branching strategy. And there is no rule saying that you must follow all. Okay, these are all proven scenarios. If your project requires that, you can use it. Otherwise, you can ignore it. Okay, fine. Now let's try to understand for what are all the purposes you can have branching strategy. When you are working for a project, you will have some environments like dev environment, test environment, UAT environment, production environment, like that. What do you mean by environment? Environment will have some servers, one or multiple servers. In that particular servers, you will be deploying your application or a service. Now, group of people will be using that environment. When I talk about dev environment, only developers will be testing the application in the dev environment. Getting the point? Let's say there are two servers and you are calling that as a dev environment. Why are you calling that as a dev environment? Only developers will be testing, only they will have access to that environment. No one else will be having access and they will be testing the application in the dev environment. Test environment meaning testers will be testing the application in the test environment. Okay, once you feel that everything is working as expected in the development environment, then you deploy into the test environment so that testers can test it. Fine. Now, if everything goes fine in the test environment and test manager is approving saying that now you can deploy into the UAT, you deploy into UAT environment. UAT environment belongs to client. Client would be testing the application in the UAT environment. If client agrees, yes, everything is working as expected, then you deploy into the production environment. So production, actual users will be using in the production environment. Okay. So now I would say each and every environment must have a branch. Each and every environment must have a branch. That means production branch, development branch, test branch, UAT branch, sometimes pre-prod branch also. Pre-prod meaning pre-production. Okay, so if any issue comes in the production, directly you're not supposed to fix on the production branch. You take the code into the pre-prod branch, you make it work, then you take the approval from the client, then again you merge that to the production branch and deploy into the production. Okay, so each and every environment must have a branch. Okay, so that is what? Yeah, this is one of the mechanism, like one of the step you need to take it for a branching strategy. This is must I am saying. But apart from this, whatever I'll be explaining, those won't be must, but this is must. Why am I saying this is must? I'll give you an example. For example, you have only one branch and you deployed into the production today. Deployed into the production today. Now, everything is working as expected. After 1 month, you will get to see one production issue. Someone has reported, actual user has reported, this functionality is not working for me. Now, you verified the logs and now you identified where is the issue. Now, you wish to make some changes into the code. Now, the problem here is just because you deployed it to the production environment, developers will not sit idle. Developers will be working on other tasks and you'll be keep pushing the code. Now, like today, when I am pushing the code, let's say you have 50 commits. Next month, when I get the issue, at that time, let's say you have 70 commits, 20 extra commits, you have it. I'm not supposed to fix on that 70 commits. Why? Extra commits, you have it. Those extra commits, you are not supposed to deploy without following the due process. Generally, that extra functionality you need to deploy into test, then to the UAT. Once everyone approves, then only move to the production. Just because you are not maintaining separate branches to fix that particular issue on that particular 70 commits, if you are trying to fix the issue and deploy it, what will happen? What will happen? You are deploying new features without taking the permission from the client. And also, since you are not following the process like test, UAT, all that, you'll end up having a number of issues. Correct? You're not supposed to do that. So that's the reason if you are maintaining separate branches like dev branch separately and production branch separately, what will happen? If any issue comes, see, today when I am trying to deploy it, let's say in the dev 50 are there, production 50 are there. Next month, when I get an issue, in production you'll have 50 only, but in the dev you'll have 70. You'll not be fixing it in the dev branch, you'll fix it on the production branch where you'll have that 50 only. Yes or no? That's the reason you must have separate branches for each and every environment. Are we following here? Are we? Okay. Okay. So, unfortunately, we don't have proper deployment strategy. We need to have it. Okay, let's think about it. Now I'm talking about our code. Okay. Anyway. Now that's about having branches for environment. Now the next one would be whoever has attended my demo, I mentioned you actually work on agile methodology. When you are really working for a project, you work on agile methodology. When you are working for an agile, you work on sprints. Sprints meaning every 2 weeks you'll be taking some requirements and you'll work on it and you'll complete, and at the end of that particular period, you take a feedback from the client. That is what is sprint is all about. Any project for that matter, irrespective of the technology. Okay, nowadays most of the projects are working on agile methodology only. Now, when you are working on agile, you'll have sprints. Like I mentioned, 2 weeks, one sprint, right? So sprint wise, you can have the branches. I'm not saying must. Okay, you can have branches sprint wise. Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, like that, you can have the branches. Okay, fine. The next one would be when you are working for a project, generally what will happen, like there will be different levels of experienced developers. One will have 1 year, some other will have 15 years, someone will have 2 years, someone will have 7 years, like that. You cannot expect same kind of code from everyone. Yes or no? Okay, so it doesn't mean that the person who is having like more number of experience, they'll write like proper code every time. Even that is also not true. Okay, so but definitely person who is having less experience, so definitely very rarely they will be writing like proper code. So that's the reason if you're directly keeping the code or pushing the code into the dev branch, everyone, then it becomes an issue, right? Once you deploy it, then you'll end up having so many issues. See, it's not like whether the functionality is working or not. Whether the code which they have written is performance oriented code or not. Are there any issues? So to achieve one particular functionality, I can write that particular code in 10 lines. Someone can write it in 15 lines. Someone can write it in 5 lines. But it is not like 5 lines code, whoever has written is proper, not 15 lines. It depends on that particular functionality, which is the proper solution. Only experienced person can able to get to know which is proper solution. So that is the reason before merging the code into the dev branch, it is always better to review the code and merge it. Getting a point? So that there itself, the quality is checked. Instead of deploying and then realizing it, there itself, you review the code and merge it. This has to be done, actually speaking. That is the reason people generally says PRs. You'll be keep hearing this PR. Pull request, we call it as. I'll come to that. Okay, so to do that, what needs to be done? Each and every developer can maintain their own branches. Can maintain their own branches. In that way, what will happen? You are, before merging the code into the dev branch, you need to create a request. That request, we call it as pull request. Developers creates a pull request. Pull request, why do you create this pull request? Is actually to merge the branches in the central repository after reviewing. In that pull request, you will be mentioning who should be reviewing it. You'll mention tech lead or architect or someone's email ID, so that they'll get that pull request and they'll be reviewing the code first. Once everything is proper, they feel that yes, now it is work. Now this particular code is proper. They can merge it. They can accept. Once they accept, what will happen? It gets merged. If they're not accepting, what will happen? Again, you need to work on that particular code, and they'll comment it saying that these are all the issues you need to rectify it. Then again, you rectify those issues. Again, you'll be pushing it. Then again, you need to create a pull request. Once it gets approved, then only it gets merged into the dev branch. So that's the reason it's better to maintain individual developer branches. Is that clear? Then sometimes instead of maintaining individual developer branches, you can maintain feature branches. I'm not talking about FUTURE, feature, functionality, feature, FEA. Okay. So that means login is one feature, registration is another feature, order management is another feature. Like that. Generally, both like one developer will not be working on one, like multiple developers will not be working on one feature, right? If I'm saying like login, you work on login, you work on registration, like that I mentioned. Yes or no? Okay, multiple developers will not be working on one feature. So that's the reason. Future wise, if you have, you can have the branches. Correct, right? Then the same thing. Again, you create a pull request, then it gets merged, all that will happen. Instead of having developer branches, feature branches, you can have it. Actually, better to maintain feature branches instead of developer branches. So that if any issue comes directly, you can go to that particular feature branch and have the fix and all that can be done. Okay, so in that case, there can be multiple branches, that's fine. But feature branches is the trend actually. Generally, you see a number of feature branches instead of developer branches. Okay, so now what I'll do is, now you understood, right? Like for what are the purposes, for what are the scenarios, we need to have the branches. Okay, now I'll show you one branching strategy document which I have created for one of the project. Okay, try to understand whether, I'll give you 5 minutes time. So try to understand whether you can understand. If someone can explain, that would be better. Otherwise, I'll only explain. Okay. This is the branching strategy document which I have created for one of the project. Just try to understand whether you'll get something. One more minute. Okay. Can anyone explain? Okay, let me explain. So you can see here, I have environments, 4 environments here: production, pre-prod, test, dev. Each and every environment has one branch. For production, I'm using master branch, pre-prod hotfix branch, test branch, dev branch. And I'm using sprint branches. I'm mentioning peer review, I'll come to that. So, but this is a sprint branch. And there is no rule saying that the document has to be in this way. Ultimately, there should be a strategy, and everyone should be able to understand by looking at the document. And also, it is a DevOps engineer's responsibility to initially, when you are starting a project, you need to explain the strategy to all the developers. Getting my point? Okay, so this is my own way of doing it. I mean, you can have the diagram in your own way. Understand? But ultimately, everyone should understand. There is no pattern saying that this has to be in this pattern. Okay, fine. Now, I am trying to maintain sprint branches for my project. Now, in my project, I actually have 2 repositories. Actually, there are many, but over here I mention 2 repositories. One is iOS, second one is Android, because we work for mobile applications. So that's the reason. One is Android, second one is iOS. There can be ones related to the APIs also. Okay, then instead of having developer branches, we are trying to maintain feature branches. Feature branches. Now, to merge the changes from the feature branch to the sprint branch, we are trying to create a peer review pull request. Generally, there will be a pull from the sprint branch to the feature branch. And after that, we are trying to create a peer review pull request. Pull request, I already mentioned. Pull request is actually to merge the branch code from the feature branch to the sprint branch or to the dev branch or something. Who does that? Whoever is the reviewer. You need to mention the reviewer's email ID or something. So in the Bitbucket directly, you can create the pull request. I'll show you that later. Okay, so now why am I saying peer review pull request? Peer meaning the colleague. My code, you review it, your code, I review it, like that. Peer review pull request. Fine. And it's not that only review can be done only by one developer. Multiple developers also can review it. Okay, then after that, you create a architect pull request from sprint branch to dev branch. Sprint branch to dev branch. In the sprint branch, all the developers' code will be there. So now, to merge into the dev branch, you create an architect pull request. That means architect will be reviewing the code, then accepting it. Then to merge the code from the dev to test, what exactly you are doing? You're directly merging it. Okay, so then test to master, which is master is production. I don't have UAT environment here for this project. So that's the reason I'm using like UA test is for UAT and for test both. And merging the code from where? Test to master. I'm not merging it to pre-prod or hotfix branch, directly to the production. Why am I keeping hotfix branch here is, if any issue comes in the production, directly you're not supposed to fix in the production, which is on the master branch. You take that code into the pre-prod, you make it work. Once everything is working as expected, then you merge the changes to the master. then make it work in the production. Then that change, you need to take it to the developer branch also. You can see this arrow, right? Because along with that particular change, you need to have it in the dev branch. So that with that, it moves to the test and production. You test along with that change here. Understood? Okay, this is what is branching strategy for that particular project. Clear? There can be some questions. If you have any questions, you can definitely ask me tomorrow also. But you go through the recording and try to understand whatever I taught on this branching strategy. Okay, again and again, you repeat the recording, you will get to know. Okay, at one shot, you might not be understanding 100%, but when you really try to learn, like repeat the recording again and again, you will definitely get it. But still, if you are facing any issue, you can always connect with. Okay, again, I'm saying if you are stuck somewhere, after verifying thoroughly, you need to send a message to me saying that this is not working. What is the issue here? I will definitely help. Okay, so that should be the common practice. If you are stuck, you should not be thinking that whether I should ask or not. You should ask. Then only you can move forward, right? Otherwise, you'll be there on. Okay, everyone knows my mobile number. So you should be asking me. First, you send me a WhatsApp. If require any call, I'll only give a call. Okay, any questions now? Anyone? Okay, thank you. So tomorrow we'll resume the session. Okay.